Hey, hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, Reese Witherspoon and Sofia Vergara are on the run in Hot Pursuit. Jack Black tries to organize the perfect class reunion in The D Train, and Russell Crowe gives us his directorial debut in The Water Diviner. We have two home media moments for you this week: Oscar-nominated animated feature Song of the Sea, and Kevin Kline in The Last of Robin Hood. Our triple feature of older films is new classic We're the Millers, old classic The Firm, and Oscar A to Z film Autumn Sonata. Taking a cue from We're the Millers and Hot Pursuit, our top five this week is our favorite crime comedies. First, let's start with Hot Pursuit. Reese Witherspoon is Rose Cooper here, a police officer who hoped to follow in her respected father's footsteps, but after a miscommunication in which she tases the mayor's son, she becomes a laughingstock. She has the chance to redeem herself, though, when she is to escort a cartel informant and his wife, Daniela, played by Sofia Vergara, into witness protection. The pickup goes horribly awry when two different sets of criminals break into Daniela's house and open fire, leaving her husband and Rose's partner dead. Soon Rose and Daniela are blamed and go on the run to try and clear their names and save their own lives. Director of the delightful The Proposal, Anne Fletcher, brings none of the charm of that film to Hot Pursuit. Her directing here is frantic and uneven. Now, the Sandra Bullock movie that most comes to mind here is clearly 2013's The Heat. Witherspoon's Rose character is clearly cut from the exact same cloth of Bullock's friendless officer, and the twist at the end is basically the same. The jokes here are mostly terrible and really lowbrow, and the two leads do have some chemistry, but it just is not enough. As it goes on, there are a few good gags, one in particular that had me laughing quite hard, and compared to some of this year's comedies, it's at least kind of tolerable, but it's definitely not good. I'll leave it with a D+. Joe, how about for you on Hot Pursuit?
Well, thank you for recapping it for me. I barely remember it.
You almost fell asleep, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was having a hard time staying interested.
But given the fact that it's not even 90 minutes is surprising, folks.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, man, if I'm having a hard time staying awake, this is a bad time. Honestly, the moment I left the theater, I was already starting to forget this film. I do agree the leads kind of have chemistry. Like, I like both these women, but these characters are just so flat, and they don't really have anything new. They're more, like I say, they're more like caricatures than characters. Mm-hmm. And it feels really like a rehashed version of The Heat, which I love, but with a lot less fun, and the jokes just are incredibly lowbrow, as you said. And there were a few chuckles for me, but really, this movie was really, really bad. I did not enjoy it at all. Really, with the exception of a few decent jokes, I leave this one with a D.
Yeah, I was definitely on the fence on that one. And it's funny, one of our listeners happened to mention, like, oh, well, it's got to be better than Paul Blart with all the fat jokes and the eating jokes. But it's a little better.
Just a smidge.
Like, it's a lot of jokes about Sofia Vergara's old and Reese Witherspoon's a stick.
Oh, and don't forget Sofia Vergara's assets.
Yes, and Sofia Vergara has a nice body.
Yes.
I mean, those are pretty much, I would say, 60 to 70% of the jokes.
That whole interplay
still
is
pathetic and sad.
It's what keeps the movie together is that, and it's just not enough. Like, the first couple times, like, okay, it's funny, but they just keep hammering it in throughout the whole movie, and it's
expecting to create a running gag.
Exactly. Just it's not that funny. I feel like if they had done the commercial thing twice, that might have been fine.
Right.
Like, but by the time it comes to the fourth one, oh, she's 50.
We got it.
That's Justin, tell us your thoughts, man. I'm curious.
All right.
Justin, what did you think of Hot Pursuit?
I mean, over the years we've seen Reese Witherspoon truly grow as an actress, walk the line, wild. The girl's got a lot of talent. And Sofia Vergara clearly has a lot of comedic chops with Modern Family,
Sure.
among several other things. Why both of these women chose Hot Pursuit is completely lost on me. Perhaps I'm expecting too much out of Anne Fletcher, who also gave us a movie I know you are not a big fan of, Dan, 27 Dresses.
I know, she's certainly an inconsistent director for me.
But this is just pathetic, predictable, at times even somewhat offensive. The list goes on, and it's just amateurish, for lack of a better word, in the handling and frankly the rushed development of the story as a whole. But what honestly keeps this above failing for me is Witherspoon and Vergara definitely have chemistry, and honestly, they did have, I'd say, 3 moments in the movie that were legitimately funny scenes. I just wish
It was more?
I just wish there was more and they had better material to work with for that. So I'm actually with you, Joe. I give it a D.
You know what's weird about that movie, now that I remember it? There's something about comedies that go awry that I kind of like the more dramatic components better. Like, there's this whole, like, twist revenge thing at the end, which I actually thought was better than all the comedy in the movie, which, I mean, it wasn't great, but at least it was more interesting to me than all the dumb gags. So I was like...
You like that about The Heat as well.
That's another thing, too. I liked the more serious angle, and but in this particular one, there was just no real comedy to hold up for most of it. I don't know.
Well, Justin, I mean, I could speak to probably why Sofia Vergara took the role. It is her first leading film role.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime she pops up, it's in a very supporting role, like a chef or a fading gigolo.
Not the Smurfs?
Or the Smurfs.
Sorry.
Forgot all about that one, but yes. Reese, I really can't speak to. And I know I'm in the minority on This Means War. I enjoyed that, but even that was pretty heavily panned by people. I know you hate it, Justin.
Yeah, I thought it was average.
You know?
You have to run that sometime so I can see it.
It's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. But
Tom Hardy, if nothing else.
Yeah, Tom Hardy's good in it. But yeah, she's sort of been doing these great dramatic roles lately. You mentioned Wild, also The Good Lie.
Lest we forget.
But yeah, she hasn't done a really solid comedy that is both a commercial and critical success in a long time. That's kind of a shame.
Hey, they can't all be Legally Blonde, right?
No, I mean, obviously that's the pinnacle of her comedies. You know, I don't think anybody would deny that. But she's had a few good romantic comedies. I mean, I like Just Like Heaven. There's Sweet Home Alabama people enjoy.
That was a while ago, though.
But yeah, these are movies from at least 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be fine if she did stick to drama.
Or at least keep going with the producing.
Yeah, I mean, she did a great job producing Gone Girl, obviously, and other things like that. She does have a producing credit here, which, Justin, you're right, also begs the question, why did she take this on?
Well, maybe owe somebody a favor. You never know.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. If we ever did a top 5 Reese, I mean, other than maybe Legally Blonde, well, certainly Legally Blonde for me, I think most of the ones up there would be dramatic. I mean, even Pleasantville's pretty dramatic.
I mean, I generally prefer dramatic performances, but I've liked the few comedies I've seen.
Yeah.
Other than this one.
No,
yeah, this wasn't the best.
Has to do a better job of balancing out the equation, I think.
Yeah, I think she needs to pick, some better roles. But, at the same time, she's in that weird age group where Hollywood doesn't quite know what to do with you. Sandra Bullock was there for a long time after Miss Congeniality.
It's like, okay, you're not quite the sex symbol.
She's not quite cutesy for young romantic comedies.
But you can't be the wise old lady. You're in middle age.
Right.
But, you could still pull that off. There are plenty of actors that do. Is it harder for women, maybe?
Oh, I think it's definitely harder for women.
Because there's that harder perception of women.
I think Jennifer Aniston is the exception rather than the rule, because she's doing great in both comedy, obviously, which we'll talk about where the Miller's coming up, and her dramatic roles in Cake and such.
To be fair, though, I think that Aniston's also kept herself looking very good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Reese still looks great, though.
Reese does as well. I mean, it's not really saying anything against it, but I guess there's just the mentality when people are looking at these films and these scripts, like, can we market this?
Right.
It's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on here to The D Train, and Joe, you're going to tell us about that.
The D Train is a 2015 American comedy film. I'm actually going to say it's a dark comedy.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I was thinking. Like, it's got to be a dark comedy. Written and directed by Jared Paul and Andrew Mogul. Oh, it's 2 directors. And stars Jack Black and James Marsden. Dan Landsman, that's Black, is a self-proclaimed chairman of the High School Alumni Committee. While plotting for the 20th reunion, he has the idea of convincing Oliver Lawless, that's Marsden, the most popular guy in his graduating class, to return, thinking that this will make more people want to attend and make him the hero and he can finally be popular, I guess. He does convince Oliver to come, but only after a few wild nights of partying in California when they eventually have sex. Dan struggles to come to terms with what this means between him and his high school hero, and awkwardness ensues.
It's probably the best way to put it.
I think this is a record for me because it's one of the few times where I came out of a movie honestly not knowing what to think. Like, I'll be honest, I was like, did I hate this movie? No. Did I love this movie? No. What is this movie? And it's very strange because I kind of like dark comedies, and I kind of like what this movie's kind of trying to say about how petty high school is, and just dwelling on the past, and just kind of putting people up on a pedestal. And there are good messages in here somewhere, but the handling is just so weird. It's just so weird. Like, I don't even know. Like, things just sort of happen, and Jack Black just plays this character that's just so unlikable, but that's the point. And then it finally comes to this conclusion where, like, yeah, but you're not even really sure if it was as resolved as it could have been. So for me, this movie is really, really hard to define. I'll be honest, I really don't know what grade to give it, so I'm going to leave it in the middle with a C, because there were things about it I did like. It was interesting, but it's not a D train for me. Yeah, this movie is definitely one that I have to think about. So I'm curious to see what you guys think, because I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, well, Justin's going to go next, so let's hear what you think, Justin.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, Joe. There's one pivotal question this movie has no idea how to answer. What exactly are you trying to convey?
I've got no idea, man.
The D Train just bounces around a bunch of random ideas about high school reunions and how arbitrary most people will think that they are, and spoiler alert, they are. Mm-hmm. But none of them are handled particularly well. The character development is shoddy at best, and ultimately, because of these factors, the 100-minute running time feels near unbearable. In the end, it just feels like an incredibly underdeveloped indie that might have had some interesting ideas if it had just narrowed down to one solid, original, coherent thought, but it's just so all over the place that it's honestly frustrating to watch. I leave it with a D-.
Wow.
I think that's a little harsh, but I can understand your frustration. It's definitely unfocused.
Yeah, well,
Dan, I'm curious.
I guess I liked it a little more than both of you. I think I liked it significantly more than Justin. But to me, the worst crime that the movie commits is that it's really hard for one to imagine somebody risking their job and their marriage for literally the smallest stakes imaginable. Putting together a successful class reunion is not worthy of throwing your whole life away.
Well, I think that the whole point is that his priorities are really messed up.
Yes, clearly.
But I do agree. I remembered thinking, like, you're going to sabotage your poor boss, who's this nice guy, just to meet your old buddy from high school.
A great turn by Jeffrey Tambor, by the way.
Did like him.
As he usually gives. But that being said, I think it does have this fascinating wit about it that sort of veers between rapid-fire sitcom and dark uncomfortability. I think it works about half of the time.
Yeah.
I do agree with both of you. It is very unfocused. But I will give props to Black and Marsden for tackling these simple caricatures of people on the page and doing something a little more interesting with them than I think the script called for.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't all come together. Many of the side characters are left with nothing more to do than be window dressing, like Black's character's son, even his wife to some degree.
Definitely his wife.
Other than Jeffrey Tambor, really there aren't any other characters of note in this whole movie other than the two leads.
Even he doesn't have that much to do in this, which I was sad by.
No, but he's sort of comic relief. I mean, he has a few good lines, the whole out of touch thing,
I don't know. I just
which I didn't buy at all, but
well, I thought that was a little ridiculous to think that he'd been doing this business and he hadn't even had a computer. That's a little tough to believe.
But I think it speaks to the entire nature of the film. None of these people are steeped in reality at all. I think they're all sort of over the top characters.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's why I sort of bought it. I'm actually going to leave it with a C+.
I think that's acceptable.
I don't agree, Justin, that it was a slog to get through, with the running time. I thought it felt its appropriate amount of time. I wasn't bored with it. I didn't sit there thinking, oh, is this over yet? Or, I feel like I've been here for 2 hours. You obviously sort of did have that experience.
No, I think I started saying, is it over yet about half an hour into the movie.
Oh,
because
I liked it more than that.
Unfinished thought after unfinished thought after unfinished thought. I honestly felt like I was watching the equivalent of a first draft script.
Well,
it's definitely not fleshed out.
I can't argue with that. It's not fleshed out. That's clear. But I do think that the two lead actors give it a little more oomph than I think was on the page.
No. I mean, I'll definitely give points to Black and Marsden in that regard. But when the material is just this shoddy and mismatched and all over the place, there's not much they can do.
No, I suppose that's true. And I do wish Catherine Hahn was a little more utilized here. She's very funny, as, again, we'll hear in the We're the Millers review. Here she's the straight woman.
Yeah.
Which, to me, doesn't play into her strengths.
I don't know. I thought she was pretty good in the role.
Eh.
For what it needed.
I'm just used to seeing her a little bit more, I don't know, out of control. Yeah, like out in the open, out of control. But even in Bad Words, where she was kind of the straight woman as well, she at least had some more to do.
She got some stuff in.
You could say that. Yes.
I don't know.
But it is definitely an odd film.
It's confused, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has a bit of an identity crisis. I would agree with that.
That's honestly the only thing I can think of to describe it, a complete and utter identity crisis.
I don't know. I was kind of fascinated by it, though.
I was, too. I will say this, though. You know me and the music. These people graduated in 1994. All of the music is like early to mid-'80s.
I was wondering about that, too.
Yeah, I was worried about that, too.
For me, at all. There's one era-appropriate song in the entire movie. And it's in the background when Jack Black is in the bathroom with one of the other people from the committee.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that too. I didn't pick up any early 90s songs.
No.
Yeah, that was very strange.
Yeah, both in the soundtrack to the film and at the prom, or at the reunion.
Yeah.
They're all 80s songs. It didn't make any sense, really.
Some carryover, I guess, but you figure it'd be all grunge.
Yes, you'd think it would be a lot of early to mid-'90s stuff, not 10 years earlier.
I don't know. That's strange.
Whatever. That sort of struck me. All right, well, up next we've got The Water Diviner, and that's with Justin.
Okay, so The Water Diviner. In this one, Russell Crowe plays Joshua Connor, the titular Australian water diviner who has had his family torn apart from the events of the Battle of Gallipoli 4 years ago. Desperate to honor his departed wife's wishes to bury them at their home, Connor sets off to Turkey to find their bodies. Staying in a hotel run by war widow, I'm probably going to butcher this, I apologize in advance, Aisha, played by Olga Kurilenko, once again being incredibly wooden. And yet another celebrity attempt to the director's chair. Crowe shows that he definitely knows his way around a camera, but still has a long way to go. He has some interesting cuts here, somewhat of an interesting idea of how to throw a story together, but the general execution is very, please forgive the choice of adjective here, Hollywoodized. The story he's trying to tell definitely sets itself up for emotional firepower in more than a couple of circumstances, with integrating flashbacks, looking at Crowe's character's emotional state, and how he handles the situations around him. But his handling feels very forced, and come the third act, it's just downright melodramatic. Though with that said, it's not an entirely ineffective movie. A lot of the battle sequences are surprisingly well done, and I'll be honest, there are a few moments where there are some pretty good emotional hits. It's just few and very far between, which is still significantly more than can be said for other period piece epic Child 44. So I leave Water Diviner with a C.
Yeah, tonally this thing is all over the place for like the first 20 minutes, and then it does shift into proper focus for a little while, but then eventually commits the all-too-common sin of trying to include too many separate stories. The war tale and the trying to get resolution over his son's death is very interesting, though the incessant war dream sequences are annoying. But then this romance counterpart is so basic and generic. Thankfully, they kind of drop it for a while, but it really brings the whole film to a halt when it takes center stage. And Crowe also attempts to be too interesting with the directing. He ends up throwing way too much at the wall, and not a lot of it comes together that well. Now, he does give a strong performance in the film. I'll give him that.
Oh, yeah.
But I think he's got ways to go before he is as strong behind the lens. I actually leave it with a C as well. Now, Joe, you didn't see this one. I do think you would like the war component of it.
That's about a
But
third
that's
of it.
really, that's really the only interesting aspect of it.
Should I check it out for that? I mean, I was interested.
I think you can give this one a pass.
You probably don't need to see it.
Well, I don't know.
To be honest.
From what I heard about it, there was they try to. Isn't there some sort of sidekick or kind of like a comedic relief?
Kind of ish.
Yes,
I remember,
a little bit.
I read
with this kid
with Kurilenko's son in the film.
Yes.
I heard
very strange and
some people didn't like that very much. Like, I know about the movie.
Right.
I looked up a little bit about it just because I was curious, because, like, Russell Crowe directing, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
And I heard pretty much what you guys are saying, like, he's got promise, but it sounds pretty imbalanced.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And the storyline with the kid comes into play, like, right about maybe 15 minutes in. And all of a sudden it's like, right, I thought he was on his way to the Best Marigold Hotel or something. Like, it was like the soundtrack, like, gets all, like, jokey. Yeah, like, it was very, very bizarre.
He's basically the World War I equivalent of Short Round.
That's kind of what I was expecting.
Okay. It took me right out of it, and then I was like, all right, what kind of movie is this now? And then, like I said, it kind of shifts into focus a little bit. It focuses a little bit more on the war stuff, but at the same time, he's still, like, living at the hotel with this love interest and the son, and
which didn't need to be there, but they kept shoving it in our faces.
All. It was completely out of place, I thought, and obviously that's a script issue as well, but his directing, I don't think, lent itself to that at all. What did you think, Justin, of all of the flashbacks?
I thought the first, like, 2 or 3 were actually good. I just wish there had been better ways to put them into the story instead of just Crowe is on a mission, and now, because clearly his mission is not interesting enough, we need to cut to a exciting battle sequence.
But see, because of his directing, I don't even know if they were flashbacks or dream sequences, because he wasn't there, and it seemed like he was the one thinking about it. So I can't say that they're even really flashbacks so much as perhaps his mind's interpretation of what may have happened.
Yeah, I'd say it's a fair interpretation. I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to say to his character, and I feel like there were better ways to convey that could have helped us understand him on a whole new level and explore that complexity. But
I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
Please.
Well, it's good to hear that Russell Crowe gave a good performance.
He did.
That's rare these days, it seems.
Now, it's been a while.
Dan, you said that you thought that I'd find the war stuff interesting, but you didn't like the flashbacks? You said they were annoying?
I just didn't. I like the war component of the film, but I don't think the flashbacks needed to be A, as present as they were, or B, directed in the style that they were.
How were they directed, would you say, Justin? Dan, one of you.
Well, like I said, you don't quite get a clear sense of, are these flashbacks or are these dream sequences that he's imagining?
Well, I mean, the last major one focuses on his sons, so I'm imagining it's his interpretation of how it went down.
A lot of them focus on his sons, though.
Well, wouldn't it just be simply a flashback showing the audience what happened to them? Does it have to be his...
No, because the way it's directed makes it look like he's thinking about it. It makes it look like it's, one of those...
Like him just kind of imagining
like looking off in the distance and remembering, but he wasn't there, so obviously that's not what's happening.
This is a terrible example. I apologize in advance, but you remember the fourth Fast and the Furious movie where Dom's looking down is like trying to piece together what happened?
Yes.
It's more or less that.
Okay, gotcha.
I wasn't kidding when I said it was a terrible example.
No, that's actually not a bad example. I just... out of left field.
Well, I mean,
didn't expect that.
It's kind of like somebody sort of recreating things like Sherlock Holmes or something, like this is what happened,
right?
But less detective, more just psychic intuition.
Yeah, but he's not Sherlock Holmes. He's just a father.
Yeah.
So it just didn't come together for me in that area. But the war story itself is the only salvageable part, really, of the whole movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're going to move on. We have 2 home media moments for you this week, and the first is The Last of Robin Hood. This is a biopic of the last few years of Robin Hood actor Errol Flynn's life, focusing mainly on his romantic relationship with a 15-year-old girl named Beverly Adland, played here by Dakota Fanning, and her showbiz-obsessed mom, played by Susan Sarandon. It takes us through their entire relationship until Flynn passes away when Beverly is 17, and then the focus of the film shifts to the legal battle for his estate and Beverly's mom penning a tell-all book about their courtship. Kevin Kline plays Flynn and does a good job with the role, but the script and direction, both by Richard Glatzer and Wash West, basically mutes all of the events portrayed on screen until we're left with such a bland version of what happened that it just isn't all that interesting to watch. It comes off as more like a TV movie of the week than a feature film.
I believe it's Lifetime, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Lifetime, True Hollywood Story, maybe even. Really, the performances are all pretty good. Fanning, I thought, was much better here than in Effie Gray from last month. And the sets and locales all look great for the time period. But compared to other behind-the-scenes 50s and 60s Hollywood tales of late, like Hitchcock or My Week with Marilyn, Robin Hood just does not hold a candle. I'll leave it with a C, which I think is probably a little generous, but I did like the performances here. Joe?
Man, what a disappointment.
It tells an interesting enough story, but they just don't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's really the best way to describe it. I mean, I think it's really cool because, as you know, with the history of the show, we all loved the Robin Hood Adventures.
A plus is all around.
One of the best Oscar movies we watched.
Yeah.
And Errol Flynn, what an interesting person. I think the best thing about the movie really is the performances. But I think specifically Klein does do a good job.
Fantastic.
I really liked him. I thought he got into the character. I enjoyed that. And there are interesting aspects to the story. Like, I liked what they were going for, but it's just done in this really muted way, like you said. And it literally felt like I was watching a film with no real life in it. And that was the biggest crime. Like, there was no real passion here. They didn't really go deep enough. They just kind of skimmed the line, and it was really, really cheesily edited, too. I thought this thing must have had an incredibly low budget. I was like, is this a made-for-TV movie? Because that's what it looked like. I thought Sarandon was okay. It's not one of her strongest performances.
That's why I didn't really mention her in the review. It's okay.
Dakota Fanning was actually kind of interesting, though. I haven't seen her in anything in a while myself. I know you guys saw Effie Gray. Has she been anything recently?
Not really.
Unless you count Twilight.
Yeah, Effie Gray was the first time I'd seen her in probably 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know if I saw the Twilight movie, so I don't know if I've seen her in anything in a long time. But yeah, I thought she was pretty good in this. It's just, I don't know, it didn't really hold my attention that well. I'm going to leave it with a D+.
I will say this before we go to Justin. For some reason, I just let the credits play all the way through. And I noticed that it is... what was it? An A&E Productions movie. It was some sort of network attachment to it. It was released theatrically.
Was it?
But very briefly and limited. But there obviously is some sort of a television network component with it. So that maybe sort of
explains a lot.
Explains a lot there.
It just looked like some of the studio issues just seemed kind of low to me. I don't know. I mean, it was well hidden in some ways, but just like the worst thing about it were those transitions with like the newspapers and the magazines.
Oh my god, yeah.
They
was bad.
Looked so
it was corny.
Fake.
Yeah.
It was just like that just does not gel at all.
Justin, let's hear from you on The Last of Robin Hood.
It's funny watching this after covering the adventures of Robin Hood on this show. Most people are well aware of the fact that Flynn was box office gold for his time, but as moviegoers and critics, we sometimes forget about the private lives of these celebrities, which put these perspectives in an entirely different light. I thought Klein did a really good job with this, and I think he's honestly what holds this movie up to some extent.
Pretty much.
The biggest issue is, though, once he's off screen, when he obviously his character passes away.
Spoilers! It's okay, he does.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like Citizen Kane spoiler. It just goes completely off the rails, dragging on significantly longer than it should, depending almost entirely on Dakota Fanning and Susan Sarandon. Sarandon does okay. It's just, frankly, rather mediocre handling.
It's not the best characters, though, honestly.
I feel like also it's way too short for the story it's trying to tell. It runs through everything so quickly, and because he dies 70, 80 minutes into the movie, we only have 10 minutes to cover that last section, which feels incredibly forced and kind of shoddily handled. It is still somewhat of an interesting storyline. I was, for the most part, intrigued. I just wish they had more time to do things with it. I leave it with the C+.
Yeah, what was funny was somehow I looked at the time of the movie wrong, and I thought it was like 2 hours. So when Errol Flynn dies, 70, 75 minutes in, I was like, is there 45 minutes left of the two of them? Because I can't take it.
This is going to be a long movie.
And right, luckily it was only like 88 minutes or something. I don't know where I saw it was 2 hours. But yeah, because once he exits, first of all, I didn't really care about the other part. Like, the part about his estate, I guess, was mildly interesting. But really, I didn't care about Susan Sarandon's tell-all book about everything. And I didn't care about their strained relationship, the mother and the daughter.
It was basically scandal for scandal's sake. We get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of that really mattered.
Well, that was the biggest problem I had with the movie, is that for the most part, I just didn't care about anything that was happening. Like, I didn't find any of it really that interesting. I liked his interaction with Fanning's character because kind of seeing her uplifted and put into these movies pretty much just because he's in love with her.
Right.
That was interesting, but I felt like that was the best aspect of the movie, but I didn't feel like it was enough to hold everything together. Like, the mother, I thought, was bland and uninteresting. What she wanted was very predictable. I just didn't think the characters were that interesting, or what they wanted was that interesting.
Well, and, what is the legacy here of the statutory rape issue? I mean, it gets brought up by his agent, oh, hey, she's 15, da-da-da-da-da, but then, nothing ever comes of it.
Gets skirted across, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, he was notoriously a ladies' man, so I can't imagine that wasn't a bigger deal when it happened. Because even at the party where he ends up passing away, Dakota Fanning's in a conversation with this woman saying, oh, how old are you anyway? And she lies and says 21. But the woman, clearly doesn't believe her. So obviously people know that she's an underage girl. Why wasn't that explored more from the public's point of view?
Now, that could have been some interesting controversy people could have dealt with. The only counterpoint to that is, I don't know how it was in the 50s, but I know that, the way it is now and the way it is in certain states, if the parent is there and knows it and gives permission, and she was obviously heavily involved, it's not quite as big of a scandal. And to be honest, in some parts of the country back then, you could get married at 14.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's
I feel like the general public's perspective was handled, which was, we don't hate the relationship, we hate the mom being a terrible parent.
Yeah, but you look at something else from the exact same era, which is Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, granted, he was marrying his cousin, but still, she was 14, and he was sort of blacklisted from the music industry for decades because of that. And that's the same era. So I wouldn't say they're completely separate.
Well, it's almost like Errol Flynn's portrayed as being this really big man in Hollywood. He's kind of a little washed up. He was at the end of his career. This only really happened the last year or two.
And they touch on that a little bit.
They touch on that a little. They should have touched on that more. Another
yes,
a very interesting
person.
It should not have been a 90-minute movie. I think we can all agree on that.
No, but I just wish that the most interesting thing is this man, and we only get to scratch the surface. And Klein does add a lot, but really, I just wish they had focused on that more.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on to our second home media moment. Maybe this one will grab us a little bit better. It was nominated for an Oscar, and that's for Best Animated Feature. It's Song of the Sea. Joe?
Well, Song of the Sea is a 2014 Irish animated fantasy film by Cartoon Saloon, and that is the creators of Secret of the Kells. We reviewed that a little while ago. And it was directed by Tom Moore. Saoirse, a little girl who can turn into a seal, goes on an adventure with her brother Ben to save the spirit world with a magical flute that belonged to her deceased mother, who would be the source of her magical powers, and the great Brendan Gleeson voices the children's father. I like Secret of the Kells. I think that everybody could agree that movie did look beautiful, but I think what I hear from most people, and what I can kind of agree with Kells, is that there's a lot of interesting components, but the actual story might be lacking a bit. I think we have all the beauty of Kells here and a much better story. I think we have very interesting characters. And I fell in love with this movie almost instantly. I just thought it was beautiful to behold. I kept thinking of Miyazaki. You can tell they're just borrowing a lot of components from Spirited Away and a lot of his other works. And obviously, if there's some similarities there, I liked it. I think besides the world and how seamlessly it's integrated, and how much that does have this epic story, but from a child's perspective, is excellent. But that's not the best thing about the movie for me. Besides the animation, I liked how genuine it actually felt in the more realistic areas. You were able to see that there was so much emotion conveyed by the slightest movement, the slightest twitch of a character's eye, motion. And I loved how brilliant the voice acting was. I thought these kids felt like real kids. And I felt like they were written like real kids and how they interacted. It was so innocent and getting to see everything from a child's perspective, but it seemed strangely realistic, and also, like with Kells, had a lot of subtext, but I think it had a lot more focus and really knew what it wanted to be. I think this is a great film. It's absolutely beautiful, just a fantastic piece of animation, and I leave it with an A.
Justin?
I have to give it to Tom Moore. He's living proof that family films don't have to rely on cute humor, and make a film that's absolutely stunning, and tackle mature themes without being heavy-handed. Now, Song of the Seas definitely has some dark moments, but the characters grow at such a believable rate, and since it's longer than The Secret of Kells, and I'd also argue more approachable than The Secret of Kells, there's a lot of... You could say that Kells is a family film, but it's one of those things that you have to dig deep to truly understand, at least think from a child's point of view. But this allows him more time to hit these concepts home longer and more effectively, which I really truly loved. Thought the voice acting was top-notch. I do think it still gets on the darker side at times, but what I really do love about this movie is the message is both heartwarming and honestly respectable. It's easily one of the best family films I've seen in recent years. I give it an A-.
We have reviewed a lot of different animation styles on Film Fanatics in the year and a half here. And though I'm not quite as enthralled with alternative styles of the medium as you guys are, it really does come down to how good the story is. And Joe, you hit it. Secret of Kells is good, it's alright, you know, I'm a little on the lower end of that, but Song of the Sea is a magical bedtime story of a tale. And here, because of the nature of the story, the animation style is actually perfect. I think it flows so well. It's dreamlike and surreal. And I'll admit, I am a little bit biased on the voice work. You guys mentioned a couple of the actors, but the main child here is voiced by David Raleigh, who is the star of the Chris O'Dowd TV series Moon Boy, which is one of my favorites. And his character here isn't actually all that different, so it captured my attention right away. And you're absolutely right, Joe. He gives life to this little kid that is not hokey. Yeah, it's not forced. It's not hokey. It is as it should be, you know? And I think the mistake that some animation studios make is having adult women voice young boys a lot of the time. And it can work sometimes. I mean, you know, Bart Simpson. But here, it really helps to have a genuine, you know, young man voicing this character, and a professional, you know, who's been acting and stuff since he was 4. I can see why, even with a very limited release, the Academy still saw fit to recognize this one. It is a really, really good movie. I'm with you, Justin. I give it an A-. A lot better than Kells for me. I don't know if it was necessarily that it had a longer running time to flesh out the ideas, but maybe that was part of it.
I also thought it was a lot more approachable with its ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Kells was a lot of subtext on top of subtext with subtext on the side, and you sort of had to like take it frame by frame and sort of embrace it that way. It was good. It was compelling. It was just, with 75 minutes, it's a lot of ideas and that's over.
I mean, it is a lot of ideas, but you're almost making it sound like it's a bad thing. It's a film you have to go back and analyze a little bit, Justin. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but for a kid's film,
Yeah,
yes,
it is still a kid's movie.
Well, hey, Watership Down.
Okay, that's not a kid's movie.
Oh, it is. It isn't. Oh, I forgot. Excuse me.
According to IMDb, yes, it is.
The murdering kids movie.
Murdering
about the
bunnies. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but no, I agree. I think it is approachable. I think it starts off with a very believable, realistic story that you could see kids watching and kind of connecting to, and build the story around that. And it's fairly focused and relatively straightforward in its message. Whereas Kells, it's like, there is a message here, but there's also a lot of other messages. Yeah. And I feel with Kells, it was more about the visuals. Like, it was just, we'll throw a lot of cool stuff at you, and you'll be like, whoa, there's a lot of movement. This movie took its time, both in its runtime and with the actual animation.
Yes.
It wasn't always flashing and moving.
Well, yeah, and the animation is simpler here.
Yeah.
It's still, I mean, obviously it's from the same people that did Kells.
Yeah.
You can tell that a mile away. But you're right, Kells was so much about the visual component that the story is a bit lacking.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I think the animation is a little bit more subtle and a little simpler, and it gives us time to appreciate the story more. Which, it's a better story to begin with.
I think so, yeah.
All right, well, up next we're going to do our top 5 crime comedies. This is based on, we're going to do We're the Millers and our new classic, and the underwhelming Hot Pursuit we had earlier in the show. So hopefully we enjoyed these ones better than those. Justin, let's start with you for the top 5 crime comedies.
When I did my list, guys, I was like, no cops. They got to be criminals or committing a crime. You guys don't have to agree.
That was the criteria.
That was the criteria we set out. These are criminals.
Okay. Just want to make sure you guys knew, in case that I didn't know if we got that, but I guess you guys knew.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to kick mine off with an honorable mention, and that is Attack the Gas Station. Oh. This is a very, very strange anti-product placement takeover film from Korea that has this really twisted sense of humor that takes a while to sort of get into, but once it is, it's really, really funny, and just narrowly missed this list. But let's get right to it. Number 5, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Now, a lot of the early critic bites for Spy have been all about, oh, who knew Jason Statham was funny? My general response is, have you ever seen this movie or Snatch? This is a living testament that far before he was the British guy who can punch people, Statham was ridiculously funny.
He was the British guy that could punch people and make you laugh.
Exactly. Director Guy Ritchie just has such a unique style that's both witty. I debated whether or not to put this one or Snatch on there. I feel like
I was expecting Snatch, actually.
I think Snatch is easier to follow, but I think Lock, Stock is much funnier.
I think Lock, Stock's funnier, too.
Yeah. Number 4 is one I think is a bit more recognized in film fanatics, and that is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think it's both brilliantly done in terms of being a heist mystery as well as a sort of meta comedy. I loved Robert Downey Jr.'s narration, and I think it has some of the most underrated gags in Hollywood history. Number 3 is The Lady Killers. However, I'd like to note this is the 1955 version.
Oh.
Not the very interesting failed attempt at a remake from the 2000s.
I kind of like the remake.
I've heard it's not that bad to, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
I've never seen either, but I haven't heard too many good things about the Tom Hanks version.
It's something you'll remember.
Okay.
But I think it does a really good job balancing both farce as well as this sort of dark comedy heist story, and has some great talent. Alec Guinness, aka Obi-Wan Kenobi, probably to Joe. And I feel like the talent really does shine through, both blending in the darker aspects of the film and the witty comedy with how things end up playing out. And my number 2 is The Sting. This is one that I'm really glad I took my time watching, because I feel like if I hadn't, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I did. This is a really complicated heist movie, and you don't really realize it until you sit down and sort of think about it. There's a lot of great talent here. The way that it sort of plays out in chapters, I really, really liked. But you have to sort of take in each one by one. And if you do, there's a lot of payoff in terms of the gags, as well as seeing how these people play off each other to get payback.
I've never actually seen this thing.
I've never seen it either.
Yeah, I was always interested in it, though.
It's worth a watch. I definitely recommend it.
More than worth a watch. It's your number 2.
Oh, definitely.
All right, well, I'll go next. I do want to point out, we actually do a fair amount of crime comedies on this show, either in new classics or old classics. We did In Bruges, Seven Psychopaths, Bernie. Justin mentioned Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So this does actually come out quite a bit, and it's interesting to see the different areas of expertise. I only have one movie on my list from before 2000. Most of Justin's are of the more classic variety.
I tried to keep it a little all over the place.
Well, my number 5 is the oldest one on my list, and that is Throw Mama from the Train.
Okay.
Joe, hopefully you appreciate that.
It's a good one.
That classic Danny DeVito film from back in the late 80s. I mean, this is the first time I had ever seen Danny DeVito in a film role before. This was a year before Twins had come out. And I sort of knew who he was from Taxi, but I was a little young to watch Taxi, so I just sort of recognized him. But this movie made me a Danny DeVito fan for life. It's hilarious. Anne Ramsey, who plays the mom, actually got nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this. It's just a very, very funny movie. Billy Crystal, great performance from him as well. Number 4 is Bad Santa. Mm-hmm. Billy Bob Thornton, one of my favorites when this came out. I wouldn't say it's underrated, because I think people do appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, they do.
But it's not one that gets talked about except around Christmas time. And I think that's a shame, because it really is a funny movie that hits a lot of great notes. It's one of the, or maybe it is the last John Ritter performance, and one of the last Bernie Mac performances as well.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. That was one that I waited a long time to see, and I feel like it got overhyped for me, honestly.
It's possible. People do enjoy that movie.
I thought Bad Santa was okay.
Really? Oh, see, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, I kind of, with Justin, I think we might have missed the train on that one a little bit.
Okay, that's possible. Yeah, I saw it when it came out, so not in theaters, but when it came out on DVD. Number 3 is Catch Me If You Can.
Well, that's a good one.
Very good choice.
Thank you. I wasn't positive if it counts as a comedy, but
there's some funny moments.
I feel like it's one of those on the edge.
I've always thought of it as a drama, but I guess it does make you laugh a lot.
Yeah, it's very silly, actually, in its dramatic approach, even. I think Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio play fantastically off each other, and it's just a great story in general. And it's one of the few Spielberg movies that does not feel too long. It is about as long as a lot of his, but I never feel the length of this movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah. My number 2 is Horrible Bosses, another one that we've done for Old Classic on this show. It was my choice for Old Classic. The chemistry here with the 3 leads is outstanding, and the chemistry with each of their bosses is also outstanding. We've talked about this one a couple of different times, so I'll just leave it at that. They're not actually criminals in the respect that they don't murder anybody like they plan on, but they do a couple things that are pretty sketchy, so I think it works.
It counts.
Right?
They commit some crimes, yeah. It's true.
They definitely do. All right, Joe, how about you for the top 5?
Oh, yes. Top 5. This was a pretty good list, actually, and harder to choose than I thought it was going to be.
Your idea, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to have 2 honorable mentions. First one is 48 Hours, because I love that movie, and it is kind of a buddy cop movie, but one of the buddy cops is a criminal, who's kind of half the time on the run, and Nick Nolte just beats him up, but got to mention that.
Fair.
And Pulp Fiction came up, and I don't know, Pulp Fiction is another one that I personally think it's more of a drama, but there's a lot of comedy in it, so not quite make the list, but definitely thought of it.
Okay.
Number 5 is Bandits. This is a really silly, awkward, I believe it's Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Willis again, basically playing the a more really realistic version of the Wet Bandits from Home Alone. I don't know, but the Nice Bandits, and just a really funny, silly movie, and I always found it very memorable.
Home Alone is a good crime comedy. I didn't think of that, but Kevin McAllister is not the criminal. I went with who the lead characters are as the criminals.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I could have considered Home Alone, it would have been, but it'll be on another list, I'm sure, in the future. Number 4 is Mickey Blue Eyes, because I had to put it on the list because
it never goes away.
Because it's just hilarious seeing Hugh Grant try to be a mobster and make people believe that he's a mobster when he's Hugh Grant, and it's just it's hilarious. Number 3 is Horrible Bosses, because it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. Number 2, interestingly enough, is The Big Lebowski, because really, what an interesting, bizarre, and really fun classic movie that, believe it or not, I didn't really like that much for a long time. Big Lebowski was one of those movies that kind of grew on me. Most Coen brothers I can get into right away. Lebowski over time I've just really grown to appreciate it. It's just got a lot of funny lines and really iconic characters.
Can I tell you something about Big Lebowski?
You hate it?
I've never seen it for the simple reason of the overhyping. It's my younger brother's favorite movie of all time. He's been to Lebowski Fest twice. Everyone talks about how great it is, and I'm just afraid, like you guys with Bad Santa and many other movies we've talked about on the show, I'm going to watch it and be like, I don't see it.
Well,
it's definitely overhyped, but it definitely is funny.
Lebowski is overhyped. It is. I think it's a little bit overrated. I personally don't think it's one of the best movies of all time, but I can understand why people would appreciate it. It's a very unique film, and I do feel like it really grows on you. So put it there. I think I do think it's got a lot of great stuff in it.
Was Jeff Bridges nominated for that?
Oh,
are we going to watch? Okay, I thought maybe it would be coming up in the A to Z.
But it's well before The Garble. You could understand.
Well, yeah, that's true.
He's the dude.
I was just thinking. I thought maybe I would have to watch it for the Oscar A to Z anyway.
Well, my number 1 is Kind Hearts and Coronets. For anyone who doesn't know, it's another Alec Guinness dark comedy.
You like Obi-Wan and the random stuff, don't you?
But it's Obi-Wan gone basically arsenic and old lace, essentially trying to murder his way to the top in the most ridiculously insane, over-the-top way seemingly possible.
What? Okay.
Basically playing every single one of the victims. It's strange, but it's also really, really funny. It takes a little while to get going, but once it gets started, I'm honestly surprised it got away with what it did in the late 40s.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know it.
I never heard of it.
But Arsenic and Old Lace is a great crime comedy.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I've never seen the movie, though, starring our favorite, Abe Lincoln.
Raymond Massey.
But I've seen the stage version, but I imagine it's a good movie as well. But my number 1 actually is Office Space.
Okay.
I am one of the few people who saw this in the theater and enjoyed it. This one took a long time for people to catch on to. I thought this was hilarious from the start. More than a handful of quotable lines. Some great crime, great comedy. And Jennifer Aniston yet again.
Yeah.
Copier Vengeance.
Yeah, the Copier Vengeance. Michael Bolton. I mean, I mean, just about every scene has a quotable line in that movie.
Well, it's one of my favorite movies, so I guess that one would technically be my number 1 now that I thought of it. But looking at the list that I find, my number 1 is Analyze This.
Oh, sure.
Because it's one of my favorite comedies in general. It's just really weird how sometimes you have, different actors you don't think would jive well, but Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro just work well because, as you guys know, one of my favorite shows of all time is The Sopranos. This came out around the same time the show started and just takes the whole thing completely comedically if Billy Crystal was Lorraine Bracco.
Oh, perfect.
So it's pretty hilarious, and it really has a good story, and it's really engaging, and I'll try to show it to you guys sometime.
Yeah, please do. I've always wanted to see that. And the sequel, any good?
I like it. It's definitely not as good as the first one, but it's not bad. I like them both, yes.
Okay. Well, good list.
Yeah, good list.
Good crime comedies. Justin, a few on your list I'll have to look into. All right, well, we're going to close our show with our triple feature of older films. Joe, we did your classic pick, The Firm. We're going to talk about that. And our Oscar A to Z continues with Ingrid Bergman's last performance in Autumn Sonata. But first up, we've got We're the Millers. We've mentioned this a couple times on the show already, so let's talk about it. It stars Jason Sudeikis as David, a pot dealer who gets robbed while defending one of his neighbors, 18-year-old Kenny, played by Will Poulter, who in turn was defending a runaway named Casey, played by Emma Roberts. In the robbery, David loses his drug money and stash, which he owes his supplier, Brad Girdlinger, played by Ed Helms. To clear his debt, Brad makes a deal with David to smuggle some weed from Mexico. David sees creating a fake family as the best way to do this and not arouse suspicion, so he gets Kenny and Casey to come with him, plus another one of his neighbors, a local stripper, played by Jennifer Aniston, and they become the Millers. But of course, things do not go off without a hitch. Nick Offerman and Kathryn Hahn co-star as a couple also traveling from Mexico. Reviewed briefly on the very first episode of Film Fanatics before we really did full discussions about our new releases, We're the Millers is what most R-rated comedies struggle to be. It straddles that line between smart comedy and frat boy jokes, and it works so well here. It does run a little too long, and I can't say all of the gags land, so when one doesn't, you do have to wait a minute or two for the next one to fire. But these movies always live and die by the chemistry of the actors. Aniston is fantastic here, and between this and the Horrible Bosses films, I really hope she finds a home with these R-rated comedies because she's great at it. Sudeikis, another Bosses alum, is a little more divisive, I feel like. Personally, I think he's hilarious, but I can see how someone might get really annoyed by him, sort of in a Vince Vaughn style, either love it or hate his style. But the show stealer absolutely is Poulter as the dweeby Kenny. The movie holds up surprisingly well as well. This was my third time through, and it's still hilarious. We're the Millers gets a B+. Joe?
I don't think it holds up quite as well the second time, but I still enjoyed this movie a lot when I saw it. I think I was expecting it to be a lot dumber than it was, but I agree with you. I think the best thing about it is obviously the chemistry between the actors. I think they're all funny. Who's the actress that plays the girl?
Emma Roberts.
I liked her a lot in this
Nancy Drew herself.
Nancy Drew.
Lest we forget.
I thought she was pretty good in this as well. I liked all the actors. I thought, the story was decent, kind of ridiculous, but it serves its purpose. The jokes are mostly funny. I do think it runs on a bit too long, though.
Yeah, maybe 10 minutes.
Maybe like 10, 15 minutes. It could wrap up a little bit sooner, but really, for the most part, it works pretty well. It's a good comedy to pop in. Really, I think Aniston definitely could find her niche,
Yeah.
In some of these comedies still she holds strong. I'm going to leave it with a B.
Okay. Well, I think that the trimming needs to be with some of the scenes. Like, there's a specific scene where they leave the drug place in Mexico, and they sort of get stopped by like a border patrol guy, played by Louis Guzman. But that scene is just like,
it's tedious.
It's maybe like 3 or 4 minutes, maybe even longer, and there just aren't that many jokes in it.
I don't know. I think that you're right. It is with individual scenes, like the whole part where they kind of get stopped by the side and their car breaks down. They have to walk for a while.
That one I could at least get behind because at least it was going somewhere. The Louis Guzman one was just...
You can honestly cut it out of the whole movie, to be fair.
It's like, let's just throw in a random obstacle because something has to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a couple moments in the movie like that. That is a good example, but then again, you wouldn't have that cameo, so...
No, but I guess I like it, but I could live without it.
It's probably not essential.
Right. Justin, how about for you?
Well, maybe it's also a minor disclaimer here. This time we did watch the extended cut.
Yeah, that's true, and I definitely noticed a few jokes that weren't in there before.
I felt like they were about even for me. And I do honestly appreciate the fact that this was still a well-deserved sleeper hit for 2013. But the big question, I think, is, does it hold up on repeat viewing? Honestly, for me, I'm with you, Dan. I think for the most part, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll admit I still don't honestly know how to feel about Sudeikis as a leading man or his comedy style. I think he's better than Vince Vaughn.
Okay, that's fair.
I'll play devil's advocate there. But if nothing else, he has what I like to call the Tom Cruise effect, where he makes everyone else around him look really, really good.
What a segue.
Actually, yeah, firm coming up in moments.
Everyone will be better than you, Tom.
But Aniston, Poulter, Roberts, I mean, even Offerman, sorry.
Yep, Catherine Hahn.
And Catherine Hahn.
I'm sorry. Her scream when they throw the baby is, for me, the greatest part of the movie. I laugh so hard every time at that scene.
But, I mean, there are some really great one-liners. I do think it's still a little scattershot, but when it does hit, it's absolutely spot on. I just wish it was a little bit more consistent, and I feel like it would have got a really higher grade. For me, I'm jumping it up from B- to a B.
Okay. Wow, B-, Justin. Come
yes,
on.
some.
You and the comedies, I know.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it yourself. I'm usually like a one and done kind of person. I'll come back to something if I really, really like it. But for comedies, it's one of those it almost immediately invites itself to watch some classic comedies many, many times.
I agree. I mean, that's how they become quotable. You know, you don't watch Office Space once and all of a sudden you know all the lines.
No.
You know, but Sudeikis, you know...
I'll be honest.
How do you feel about him, Joe?
Well, I like him. I think he's funny. But before we watched it again, I totally forgot he was even in the movie.
Wow, okay.
So I don't know about him as a leading man, to be honest. Like I said, I enjoy his style, but I just feel like everybody else was funnier than he was.
You know, I've seen him through his many years on Saturday Night Live. I don't know how long he was on, 5 or 6 years maybe. And he's done, you know, a lot of different sketch work. But I will admit that in that group of people who are, you know, great impressionists and multi-talented comedians, I would say he is not among the greatest that they've had on the last decade or so. You know, certainly next to like a Kristen Wiig or a Bill Hader or something. But I do think he works here very well. I will admit that of the Horrible Bosses trio, if there's a weak link, he's probably the one. You know, Jason Bateman is great across the board. Charlie Day is always great.
Which I thought was kind of interesting this time around because I felt like at times he was trying to do the Bateman deadpan.
I think he does well with deadpan.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it like it's negative. I just feel like he's emulating that this time around.
Well, I mean, there is no real Bateman-esque character in the movie. I think every movie needs one.
Straight man.
You know, yeah, like the straight, the put upon, you know, person.
The reactionary.
Yeah, the reactionary. And, I mean, certainly it's not Will Poulter here.
No.
You know, it's not really Aniston either. And I think that him and Aniston play really, really well off each other.
They do.
They don't have too many scenes in the Bosses series together, but I think here they're very funny.
However, I feel like it takes a little bit more time to get into their characters, though. I feel like there's development, but I feel like it's also a little bit... Sorry, I'm trying to find the right word here with that.
Well, okay, let me see where you're going with this. Okay. I think the opening couple of scenes, like where we're getting to know the characters, especially Sudeikis, it's more just about taking pot shots at people.
Yeah.
You know, like him and Aniston meet at the mail slot, and they're sort of just, you know, back and forth, snipping at each other.
Which is like, we're trying to get behind him, but honestly, with the exception of the whole, like, Kenny defense thing, it's like, you're just not that likable a guy at this moment.
Yeah, but I think that salvages him, because he jumps right into trying to help. And that's a pretty early scene.
That's fair.
So yeah, okay, maybe he's not glamorized here because he is a drug runner and
well, no.
You know, pot dealer, and he's sort of a jerk. But the fact is, you know, he does care a bit. I mean, he sees, you know, Kenny's about to get beat up, and he jumps to his rescue pretty much right away.
There's no Philip Seymour Hoffman, though, where he just lets people pound on a guy continuously, right? Without trying at all to help him.
That's true.
When in doubt, we always go back to God's pocket. Thank you, Joe.
Had to sneak it in there.
Joe usually does.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on here. Our old classic, which was Joe's pick, is The Firm.
The Firm is this is a long one. The Firm is a 1993 American legal thriller directed by Sidney Pollack and starring Tom Cruise, Gene Triplehorn, Gene Hackman, Ed Harris, Holly Hunter, Hal Holbrook, as well as Wilford Brimley, early appearances by Tobin Bell and Dean Norris, and of course Gary Busey makes an appearance there as well. So, what a cast. The film is based on the 91 novel The Firm by author John Grisham, love the book as well, Mitch McDeere, who is Tom Cruise, is a young man with a promising future in law, like every character in a Grisham novel. About to graduate from Harvard Law School, he receives a generous job offer from Bendini, now that's the name you got to look out for, Lambert and Locke, a small tax firm in Memphis. He and his wife Abby, played by Jean Tripplehorn, moved to Memphis, where the firm is located. Now, partner Avery Taylor, played by Gene Hackman, becomes his mentor. Now, Cruise's character is seduced by the money and gifts showered upon him by the firm, including a house and a car. They even offer to pay off all his student loans. And he is, at first, totally oblivious to the more sinister side of his new employer. This isn't my favorite Grisham movie. I think that watching it again, I didn't like it quite as much as I did originally, which disappointed me, but it's still an excellent movie. I think that there are some great performances here. I mean, there's just a fantastic cast, and I like the way that the film does slowly kind of hint at things, maybe not always so subtly. You kind of know going in there's something wrong, but just watching all the different characters playing off each other and how there's this cat and mouse game where you just don't know if Mitch is really going to get out of it. And it's interesting, you get to see these younger actors portray characters that you wouldn't necessarily get to see them. You guys thought Ed Harris was practically unrecognizable,
Yeah.
showing he's dynamic, and pretty much the only villainous performance by Wilford Brimley, who's basically the evil security guy. So you get to see a lot of interesting things there. Really, I think Hackman probably gives one of the best performances in the movie, but then again, he's always good. And Tripplehorn kind of makes one of her earlier appearances showing a concerned woman, but also a dynamic character who gets to appear in other features like Mickey Blue Eyes, where she plays something very similar in a more comedic vein. But really, this is a good thriller. It's not perfect. I think the biggest thing that holds it back is it does go on a little long at points. Like there are some things they could trim down to just tighten it up a little bit. Not the best of the Grisham films, but still a very good one. I leave the firm with a B+.
Okay. Justin, how about for you?
There's no denying the repertoire of director Sidney Pollack or the potential from the early works of John Grisham, but did this movie need to be an over 2-hour epic? Absolutely not.
Probably not.
Cruise continues a series of mostly average performances from the 90s, starting with Days of Thunder, but with a cast including Hackman, Holbrook, and even Ed Harris, it's understandable he might have trouble keeping up. They downright eat him for breakfast. And it's a shame that there's so much star power, and they all just seem to have like these little episodic sequences where they're there and they're gone for a little bit and then they come back, and it just feels like a never-ending cycle that wants to build up all this tension, but because there's so much going on, it feels very, very slow. There is some payoff at times, but it's just nowhere near as intense as it's clearly trying to be, and I leave the firm with a B.
Didn't sound like a B to me.
It sounded like a C+ at best, to be honest. I do think there's great acting here. Brimley is a great villain.
Wasn't he a good
agree
villain?
with you there, Joe. I would say Cruise is at the top of his game here celebrity-wise, but Justin does make a good point. Other than Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, he really had not yet acted among some greats of the game. And here he has a lot of them to play off of. I think he does an okay job, Justin. I obviously am a bigger fan than you, as is, I would say most people.
I like Tom Cruise.
But, yeah, I mean, I thought he was fine. But you're right. I mean, compared to Hackman, early Ed Harris, even Brimley, honestly, I don't think he's
honestly
quite on par.
I think Tripplehorn outacts him a little bit.
Tripplehorn does a great job as well.
Yeah.
You're right. Tripplehorn does a great job. I think it runs on maybe 20 minutes too long. I think it could have been 2 hours, 2 hours 5 maybe. I don't think it was way too long. But the problem is that the end, maybe 20, 30 minutes, is so frantic that it's hard to even keep up with what's happening.
A lot does go on.
I definitely got a
Yes.
little bit lost. And so I think maybe it's not even so much a matter of shortening it, but maybe making it more coherent and tightening it and focusing it. Also, the jazz soundtrack is just such an odd choice.
It's really
for this
heavy.
tense thriller. Like, it really takes you out of it every time a big sax solo comes on while he's running from people.
I feel like it's trying to do this like noir thing, but it's only effective about half the time. Like the scene at the end with the monorail, I believe.
Yes.
there's some actual tension there.
There is tension, but the music is still kind of silly.
No, I was okay with it in a kind of like
I like the
Sin
ticking,
City neo-noir kind of way.
Ticking clock sort of thing. Tick to tick,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely silly. I think that is one of the biggest things rewatching it. Like, the soundtrack choices were a bit iffy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually even joking as we watched it. It's kind of like No Way Out. It's almost as bad as that. Like, one of the most unthrilling chase scenes.
It's true.
No, the best tension is actually the quiet moments, like when they're hiding.
I would agree.
Talking, like trying to hide from the recordings, or when that one scene where he walks into the firm and everybody's staring
I was going
at
to
him.
say, that's
and you're
probably
like,
the best shot sequence in the whole movie.
Like, have they
Right.
found me out? Like, oh no, you passed the bar exam. Like,
Yeah.
like, so.
Or when he gets called into the office, and then he like gets a phone call, and then his brow is all sweaty.
And I just love how in that sequence, that's also one of the best shot sequences where
I agree.
the chase begins. Is where I believe it's Holbrook. He just kind of they're just generally chatting,
Right.
And it's like, oh, where you going, son? And Riffley comes up along the side, and
Right.
he just knows he's got to get out of there. And I love that even as he's running, they don't even acknowledge it. Like, they're this person is so minuscule compared to the power of their
Right.
firm. They're almost like this secret society. Like, don't worry where you run, we'll find you. We'll send Saw after you. Jigsaw's coming. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a good movie. But to be fair though, Justin, all John Grisham movies are long, 2.5 hour epics, even if they don't necessarily need to be.
Well, they're fairly
This is
long
90s
books,
book.
right?
To be fair, the thing about The Firm, the book, which I like the book better, by the way.
Okay.
The thing about the Firm is that it has a lot going on, but all of his books and all the movies have a lot of characters. There are some episodic sequences, but I think the thing that differentiates The Firm as a story from most of the other ones, they usually focus on one or two main characters and everything's centered around them at all times. Whereas this one, it's like you've got people traveling different areas. You get to see different perspectives.
There's really too much going on.
Most of the other ones,
Absolutely.
it's like with the client, it's pretty much just
Yeah,
Brad
that
Redford
is
and
true.
Sarandon.
Yep.
You get to see a brief flashback of the mafia, and that's it. This one, I think, maybe just tells that early style of doing too much. But
And I think that was maybe the problem with it being so long, is that, you don't have to include all of the different characters from the book. You could kind of tighten it up and take a couple out that maybe aren't as necessary. I didn't read the book, obviously, so I don't know who, but, there's always something I feel like that could be trimmed a little bit.
well, that's one of the things I
You
kind
know.
of like about it is that they do keep most of everything.
Okay. Well, for me, the movie gets a B. Our final movie is our Oscar A to Z, and that is Autumn Sonata. This was a 1978 film nominated for Best Actress for Ingrid Bergman in her final performance, and also original screenplay, and it also won the Golden Globe that year for Best Foreign Language Film. Justin?
Well, as you mentioned, Dan, in her final, however, I will note, theatrical film performance, she did do a TV movie in 1982.
Oh, interesting.
Ingrid Bergman plays Charlotte Andergast, a world-renowned concert pianist who put her own success in front of her own children. Now visiting her daughter Ava, played by Liv Ullmann, the two try to reconcile until both unleash what they have meant to say for so long to each other. Director Ingmar Bergman, no relation to the actress, is a very atmospheric director, and how that impacts the viewer will depend very much on the attitude of the audience themselves. I feel like this is a world that you sort of have to work your way into and digest bit by bit. This is a story about regret and neglect and all these repressed feelings, and while it's not always the most compelling storytelling-wise, it's the simple actions that really allow these actors to shine in the most subtle ways, how they're trying to contain normalcy even though they both want to unleash all this anger upon each other and show how much damage it's truly been done. I'm not going to say it's really thriller-esque material, but it really does pay off in the final moments where they have some really, really good monologues in terms of what it all means to them, how much this has influenced them, and honestly, seeing each other's perspective. That said, I do think it does take a little while to get going at, say, 20, 30 minutes maybe, but that really does allow us to explore the complexities of these characters and get drawn further and further into this world before culminating in a abrupt, albeit the more I think about it, fair conclusion. I leave with a B+.
Yeah, the jazz soundtrack would be much more at home here, I feel like, than in The Firm. This is a very depressing character study. Bergman would rank, I think, on many top 5 worst moms list with this performance, which she's really great in. And actually, Ullmann's performance is top-notch here as well.
Absolutely.
The tension created between the two, with Ingmar Bergman helming it, though, is where the film shines. However, some scenes are dragged out far too long, and you're right, Justin, it takes a while to get going. I mean, 25, 30 minutes is almost a third of the film before we really get into the meat of it. And there's probably too much telling and not enough showing with the direction. I think it's very talky here, and it makes such a short film seem a bit long. I'm not too familiar with Ingmar's work, if I'm being honest, but there's a lot of like really close-up shots in this film that I didn't think were necessary either. I don't know if that's like one of his staples
things,
or whatever, but it's sort of distracting for me. But either way, it is hard to deny the masterclass in acting that the film gives us. I'll leave it with a B. Joe?
I don't know, sort of with you guys. I think there definitely is some good atmosphere. I guess a very atmospheric director. Not too familiar with his work, but...
I don't know, you saw Seventh Seal, I believe.
Yeah, I've seen Seventh Seal. That's Bergman as well, right?
Yeah, that's Bergman.
That's like the most famous one, I guess. Yes, I liked Seventh Seal, but I guess that one interests me a lot more. I think that this movie is definitely going for simplicity, and I think that it is pretty well shot and edited. I did like some of the techniques. I did think the acting was good, but I do agree that I guess there is a little too much talking and not enough showing, which I think makes the film drag down a little bit more. I mean, honestly, I thought some of it was kind of boring. I do wish some of the scenes would have been cut down a little bit more, because it really it goes on a minute or two longer than it needs to sometimes, and it's just unnecessary. But I did like the acting. I like the general nature of the story, but I just wish it had been trimmed up or just done something to kind of spice it up a little bit more for me. But it was an okay watch. I give it a B-.
I would like to note for you, Dan, Bergman's definitely a director that plays very much to his stage roots. He did do an adaptation of The Magic Flute, which was trying to marry the opera's theatrical roots to a cinematic style. And I feel like there's a lot of that in play with this as well, in terms of how some things are framed, the profile shots, and some transitions, letting things play out maybe a little bit too long. I think we're talking about a concert pianist here, so I mean, I feel like sequences where they're just trying to play piano, there was one while we were watching it that you and me were in a little bit of a debate over.
Well, at that point, I was just waiting for John Cusack to put his sights on her, because it went on far too long for what the movie required, I felt. Well, we sort of got the point.
I think that maybe what that scene was more cuts to make it more intense, because I know what they were trying to do, like, so, okay, this person's really good, you're doing it incorrectly, let's make you feel bad.
Right.
I get that, but there really aren't that many cuts in between that, like, okay, they don't build up the intensity of the emotion, it's more monotonous.
But I also feel like that allows the actors more time to develop their characters, to really play off each other instead of cutting to, like, maybe their fingers or...
Well, maybe that's just a stylistic thing. That's what I would have preferred. Like, let's have, like, a soundtrack here for.
But like
this,
I said, this is an atmospheric film, not necessarily.
And that could add atmosphere.
I'm not so sure.
Well, it would. I mean, maybe, that's what it would do.
Depends on your definition of the word atmosphere, but
how something feels, the feeling within the film, the environment.
But I mean, this is a film that takes place in the entirety of a person's home, and I feel like that's the general atmosphere.
Yes, and I mean, I just have seen it shot different ways. I mean, you can obviously have something take place in one house or one room and be more interesting. Carnage is a good example.
Yeah.
Very basic, but very dialogue heavy, very similar emotions, maybe a little more comical, but I think you can mix it up a little bit more. I mean, I'm just saying a little variety would have, like I said, spiced up the film a little bit to get it moving a little more, because I just feel like there wasn't enough diversity between those cuts.
But I also think, as Dan put it, this is an atmospheric character study. So you really need to focus on the characters, not necessarily just all these little fancy tricks that you can do, but don't necessarily need to do.
You might be right, but character studies can allow the actors to breathe, but you can also have cool cinematography within character studies. I think Oscar Isaac's a good example of that.
That is true.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted a little more. I'm not saying they have to be, like, incredibly experimental and have, like, random angles here and go, like, afterglow everywhere with mirrors and stuff. Like,
I agree.
I'm not saying
that's too much.
I'm just saying, like, a little bit more diversity in those scenes would have made them drag a little less. Because if you're literally... What is it? Is it Mulligan and Shame? Is that what I always talk about? What's her name?
Oh, the extreme close-up, yeah.
Okay, like...
yes, Carey Mulligan, yep.
Yes.
Like, I get what they're going for, but I just feel like you gotta cut it a little bit. Like, a minute, 2 minutes, it goes longer than that. Do something.
It does-
Well,
zoom in, zoom out, do something.
I guess if you're doing a musical performance in a non-musical movie, you don't have to show the entire 3.5-minute musical performance. That's what they did in Shame.
Yes.
And that's what they do here. I don't think that that is necessary to convey the emotions of the scene, is all.
However, I feel it's a pianist, a world-renowned pianist, trying to work with a person, trying to work with her daughter, who's trying to follow in her mother's footsteps, but clearly can't. So I feel like
Correct.
So I feel like hitting that beat is important to hit its entirety.
And I agree that is important. I liked the scene, kind of. I just think it could have been a little bit more
I just think
interesting.
it hit it too long, or right, could have mixed it up a little bit.
I mean, I'm not dramatic change, just something else.
I do think it's a key scene in the movie. I just don't think it needed to be exactly the way it was in the film.
Yeah.
To convey that expression.
If what marks anything, it's probably the most memorable scene in the movie for me.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know, it sticks out the most.
I don't know. There's a couple scenes that's stuck with me after we
closing. There's a couple scenes towards the end that are
like I like the
pretty
integrated.
intense.
I thought the integrated flashback was really, really good.
Yeah.
I know you probably want to wrap this up, Dan, but Justin, you said you didn't really mind the ending very much. I thought that was way too abrupt. You said you thought
it was very abrupt.
In retrospect, you thought you might, but I didn't even retain it.
It was abrupt, but it was kind of abrupt in an Edge of Tomorrow kind of abrupt in terms of like I sat on it, I thought about it a little bit more, I looked at other people's interpretations of it. I was like, I feel like this movie kind of needed that ambiguity. I'm not saying it's how I would have ended it, but I also feel like if it had this straight up like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry kind of thing, it wouldn't mean anything.
It just seemed to come from out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a
I'm
weird
not saying
cut.
everything needs to be wrapped up pretty with a bow,
The actual
but
cut.
I'm not saying it's a 100% solid ending. I'm just saying
Yeah.
I feel like it's fair.
all right, well, that is going to wrap it up for the show this week. We are firmly in summer movie mode now, so next week we're going to have Pitch Perfect 2 and Mad Max Fury Road, as well as some other things. And Joe, I'm sure you're going to do a Mad Max review on your Merlin channel.
Most likely.
Yeah, I would think. So you can subscribe to our channel here on the page, and we'd love to have you aboard. You can also join the conversation on our Facebook group, which is Film Fanatics with an exclamation point. And our Twitter feed is at Film Fanatics Pod. We post our 5-word reviews there weekly, leading up to that week's show. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back here next week. Bye.